Your phones, computers need to be tuned into what we're doing. You should be logged in and in the Zoom room listening intently because I don't need too much of your time today, at least at the beginning. Okay, so first things first that I want to go over, we got to make sure that our OneDrives are syncing so that we have a decent place to save our files. So I think that's the same screen that I just shared initially. It is. I got to switch. Screen one. Okay, you should be able to see my larger screen now. Okay, perfect. All right. So first things first, you guys want to check and make sure that if you open up this caret icon, I've got a whole bunch of different things going on my PC. But if you open up this caret icon, you want to look for this blue cloud, okay? If your cloud is not blue, if it is gray with a slash through it, that means, can you guys see it on the Zoom screen? Is it popping up? Okay. That means that your OneDrive needs to be signed in and synced. It is the same login that you use to access your computer and your Outlook. I want to click through all of the default settings, and we'll make a quick future-ready folder once you guys are sure, 100% sure is these, that your files are all synced. If you're in my graphic design class, you know this process. If you've taken my classes before, you know how much of a pain in the butt I am about it, because I don't want you guys losing your work that you did work before. Okay. So, continuing this, kind of building the routine of what happens when we come into Blakeney's class in 2207. You always want to start by checking that blue cloud. Hi, good morning. We're in the Zoom room just doing some housekeeping. You always want to check that blue cloud, and you want to make sure that it's blue and not gray. If you save your work to your OneDrive and it's not synced, or you save your work to the PC and it has to get fixed, or you don't have access to it when you need it, I did tell you guys how to sync it, and that is a conversation that you and I are going to have because this is something that you should always be checking the second that you sign in, at least during this first week, until your computers figure out that it's supposed to sync as soon as you get started. That's my way of saying, if you didn't save your work to a safe place, then in the future, you will know to do that, and you should avoid that in the next times. Okay, so anyway, as long as your cloud is blue, it's got a bunch of stuff that you click through. You don't have to do it every time once the computers kind of figure out who sits where at what time. They get a feel for it as well. That's the first thing you guys are always going to be checking. I hammer it and I say it all the time because I don't want you losing your files, and I want you to have access to all the different versions whenever you need to. I'm gonna put this up here. Okay, so let's move on to the first little activity that I have planned for you guys today. Let me switch my screen share around real quick. Let's go back to the thread. Okay. I'm going to walk you through kind of how I structure my canvas so that it makes sense, like at a quick glance. This will go, the two things we're going to cover are how I name my assignments, how to read the modules, and how to name your files when you finally end up submitting them. Namitha, I hope you're not on your phone while we're live. Thank you. Okay, let's go through that real quick. So if you go to the modules, there's some new stuff in resources, as well as some stuff down in week 2 that we're going to talk about here in just a second. We'll get into Excel tips once we get to the budget portion of the day anyway. Okay, I want to start off with assignment names. So this is the same thing in my other classes, but I always break down my Canvas assignments with all of the relevant information at the front. And that relevant information comes in 4 steps. Those 4 things will have the grading category that the assignment is a part of. It'll have the unit that it's related to. It'll have the step in the unit that it comes before or after. And so if you're outside of class, you want to follow this order counting up. And then finally, the project name itself. And this is relevant because we're going to talk about the required file naming scheme that is graded on your first couple projects and then a markdown on your future projects, because it is important that you submit your files in a certain order. Okay, so you can see this in example with your first project that we're going to work on, or we're going to get started working on today. PROJ 1.1 budgeting spreadsheet version 1. So projects is that grading category that's found in your syllabus, or you can see it in the assignments tab, I believe. Oh, it doesn't say it. Okay, show by type. There we go. If you go show by type, you can see the breakdown of how much each of these items is worth for your grade. We go back real quick. So that's the grading category. This is unit 1, so it's going to have the 1 right here. This is the first step of unit 1, so it's 1.1, and then it's got the name of the actual project right after it. So if we go into assignments once again, you can see that these haven't had it yet because they're not necessarily attached to a unit. Now that project 1.1, because we're getting into our finances unit, this is going to have the scheme, so you can easily tell what you need to focus on if you've been absent or what you need to prioritize if you're trying to get your grade up. That information at a quick glance is going to be the way that you find that. Okay, so before we get into the actual project that I have planned for you guys today, if we go back to the modules, we need to talk about the required file naming structure. This is the same as all of my courses. So if you have graphic design with me, then you are practiced with this so far. But this is the required file naming scheme only when you submit things. Ideally, you use it for every project, even the ones that are in progress. But when you submit things, they have to have this information and this information only in the file name. Now, it looks like a lot, but it's just your first initial and then your last name, no spaces. You can separate it by capitals like I have here. And then your class period number, followed by an underscore to separate the information, the name of the project, which is what it is on Canvas, and then the version number of that project. That's a little bit more in reference to graphic design or web design, some of my other courses where there's lots of different drafts. But for our cases, we can ignore the version number for the most part, but it is an important part of the file naming scheme, so you can kind of keep track of everything. Looks like a ton of info, right? When you submit it, it just looks like this. It's the way that you're going to put your name on your digital assignments when you end up submitting them, so that I can quickly see whose is whose, and I can quickly see what project is what, helping me grade your stuff faster and keeping us all kind of on a nice, efficient pace. There's some reasoning behind this outside of what I've kind of explained if you want to read into that. You don't have to, but I just explained why I've decided on this. You can use this scheme in other classes. I use this scheme in every file in my personal life. Yeah. While you're working on your files, you can call them whatever you like, but when you submit them, they must be in this format. You will lose points if they are not in this format. So we'll get used to it, especially with our first project coming up due on Friday. But I also want you to experiment with what works for you, and for because I know that I've come up with this after lots of trial and error. But for the purposes of practice and for this class and the semester, this is the required naming scheme for final submissions only. You can name them whatever you want inside of your OneDrive, but when you turn them into me, they need to have this specific naming scheme. Okay, does that make sense? Any questions on that? Okay, I will move on. Let's go to the modules and click on this Unit 1 Finances right here. The way that I set up my Canvas, you can tell that we go by week. Each unit is going to have some type of page explaining what the unit's about and kind of introducing you or having some relevant links that don't go in resources. And then everything underneath that is going to be what's called nested in web design and kind of a staircase. That staircase is the order that you're going to follow, the projects in. So let me give you an example in graphic design real quick. There we go. So if we go to modules for graphic design, you can see that we did some different stuff in graphic design with unit 0, and then they had a quiz and a discussion board. And because they were in this certain order, they're stacked up in this nested sequence so that you can quickly tell where you need to start and how it leads into the next things. There's also 2 separate units that we've started this week in graphic design. Hi, good morning, you're good. Yeah, you sure? No problem. There's 2 separate units that we've started in graphic design, and those are going to be the ultimate like top of the staircase, and then everything underneath is just going to kind of fall down the steps. So this is how I like to structure my Canvas for the quickest access of information. Let's talk about Unit 1 Finances, which should be authorized. It's published. Let me in. Okay, so Unit 1 is going to be focused on finances. That's going to be the stuff that you guys are interested about, like taxes or FAFSA or loans or credit. So it might be a longer unit. But before we get into any and all that, you guys need to have some kind of scope of how you can distribute your money without going broke, without going over what you're making, living outside of your means. And we're going to start that with a budgeting spreadsheet. So it's pretty hard to prepare for the future without knowing the best ways to use money, obviously. We're going to start off with that budgeting spreadsheet, and then I want you guys to track your spending, whether that is your actual spending of your money or you want to make up transactions. Those are both fine, but you do need to use this spreadsheet for about 2 weeks in order for it to really be useful and for you to get into the habit of tracking your finances. Okay, so we're going to do that for at least 2 weeks. These can be real transactions or simulated transactions, your choice. We're going to go over how to create a budget spreadsheet in class. But first, you guys need to come up with some working numbers for some of the jobs that you may be interested in. So to start your budget, you need to gather some data. This is your upcoming responsibilities for a little bit of your class time. So using the jobs that you found interesting for yourself from that discussion board the other day, I want you guys to find an average salary for the position that you want. To do this, I want you to find at least 5 different numbers and then take the average of those numbers, and that will become your yearly salary. First things first. So let me write this down on a notepad so you guys know what I need you to be focusing on. Okay, so step 1 of the budget spreadsheet is to come up with a yearly salary. You need to use the jobs you're interested in. And then create the average based off of at least 5 sources, just from the internet or from other professionals that you know that are in this position. And that's going to equate to your yearly income, which on the next step, we will divide into monthly income. And then the next step after that, we're going to divide onto our budgeting spreadsheet. So here's kind of the steps that I want to get to today. Your guys' step currently is to come up with that yearly salary, and then I'll give you guys about 20 minutes tops for that before we start talking about how to build it into a spreadsheet. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions on what I'm asking? Okay, so what time is it now? 10:27. About 10:45. We're going to start calculating monthly salaries and then put them into, I'll show you some Excel tricks that can do all the math for you. I'll give you an example of the budgeting spreadsheet that I created that I use that works super well for me. It saved me over $3,500 in the last 3 months. So it's a useful one. And I want you guys to get ahead of that because I just figured it out now and you have way more time than me. Okay, anyway, sorry, I'm talking about you. Step 1 is come up with your yearly salary. If you need help, I can help you. I'll be wandering around. But 10:45, we're going to reconvene back in the Zoom room and talk about the next steps. Okay, go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're live. That means your phones need to be put away, especially up front where I can see you. I want to give you guys an example of some of the things that we're actually going to, or what I'm trying to accomplish today in a basic sense. Okay, so I'm going to swap my screen share so that you can see the spreadsheet that I use. We won't get into the, we'll get into the basic functions of this spreadsheet, and it'll grow as we do. So you should be able to see my other screen, which has 4 columns, or 4 plus 1 columns. It's got bills, fund, groceries, savings, and then another colorful one on the left-hand side. You guys should all be seeing that, right? Okay, so this is a template spreadsheet that this is the exact copy of the mathematical one that I use every day. And you'll notice there's already some math automatically happening here. And this is just the template because it has no information here. It does have some color going on. But the process that I do every month, this might not work for you, but this is what works for me, is I take this template, I right-click on it. This is a Google Sheet. I duplicate it, and it gives me a copy. And then I rename that for the month. So this is February 2024. Okay. Oh, I already have that one. Okay, so this is, here, let's go. SHS Feb 2024. All right, so can somebody give me, and I go up here and I change the month to be Feb. Can someone give me one of their working numbers for their positions? You want to just shout them out? Okay, so I'll walk you through instead some of the breakdowns here. This is my section of the spreadsheet that breaks my my income from the Issaquah School District into my 4 separate categories. I have this $200 buffer so that I'm kind of making that money disappear in a sense so that I don't have to, it's kind of like secret savings. And keeping me on budget while also knowing that I have that $200 buffer just in case anything were to happen. So let's say, for example, I made $3,600 this month. I'm going to go up here by clicking on the income section. Hold on, let me set that back to 0. I go to the income section, which is ISD for me, and I change this 0 right here to be what I got paid. So let's say I got $3,600. Now, when I hit enter, it's going to calculate out how much money I can spend in each category automatically. So I can spend $2,000 on my bills, $510 on fun stuff, $510 on groceries, and I should be saving about $340. Is this breakdown right here? This parity section is checking my math because I'm not very good at math and I want to make sure that my numbers are accurate. This section adds up these 4 so that these numbers end up being the same. This total section creates a sum of each of my different subcategories so that I know how much I've spent or how much I've made and how much I've spent is the actual one. So this right here, I have set up to be green when I'm on budget, red when I'm off budget, and yellow when red when I'm over budget, and yellow when I'm right on budget, which happens very rarely. I'm usually either green or red. So finally, breaking down some of the pieces on this left here, the supplement section is any extra money that comes in that is not from my main job. This is just extra cash. Let's say grandma gave me $50. So I'm going to put $50 right here and then hit enter. That $50 is going to be broken down in the same ratio and then added to this total right here. So I know that I can spend $3,450 this month without going over, without losing any money. Because remember, I made 36, but I only budgeted 34. So I have that secret 200 just hanging out. The cool part about the spreadsheet that I'm going to show you, let's say that my rent is $1,000, which is awesome, amazing rent around here. I'm going to call this rent. That's going to add that $1,000 to this bill total section, and it's going to count it against my bill balances remaining. You can see that my actual number goes up. You can see that my total remains the same, and this number goes down. It gets decreased by $1,000. So if I take that out, it's back to $2,070. Put it back in, down to $1,070. Okay, let's say I get a drink at Mercury's for $12 with tip. Call that Mercury's. Let's say I spent $50 at QFC on the plateau. And let's say I put $200 in savings. I have a section, I have a section for the amount and what it was for, so that I can have accurate kind of representation when I go back and look at the end of the month about how much I spent where. Let's say I went to Mercury's 10 times. Oh, I spent $2,000 at Mercury's. That's a little much. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. All Mercury's, and I can just click and drag this down. I'll show you how to do that as well. So that's all my fun money. Bills, pretty self-explanatory. Stuff I gotta pay. Otherwise, I go to jail or you go to jail. You know, we don't want that. Monopoly style. Fun money is anything that's not required. So that's gonna be my my coffees. It's gonna be my just like impulse purchases, tasty treat runs. That goes in the fun category. Groceries and savings are also pretty self-explanatory. You can see that because I spent $12 10 times, it automatically adds up my fun total to $120 and takes $120 off of my fun balances remaining here. So this is just, sorry, I'm getting into the weeds here a little bit. This is an example of one that works for me because I found too often that budgeting spreadsheets didn't make sense to the way that I like to do them. So what I'm going to do with you guys, now that we have these working numbers, we can calculate a monthly income, and I can show you some of the ways that I've made this math happen automatically so that you can create your own, or you can copy one like this so that you have an idea of where your money goes every month. I want to give a disclaimer. Learning where your money goes every month is kind of embarrassing. Like if I look back on some of the times that I went over budget on my fun category, I went way over budget, and it's kind of embarrassing to know how many times I went to 7-Eleven to get a tasty treat at 2 a.m. It makes you confront how you're using your money. It changes your relationship with how your income works, because now you can actually see it all in one place. Okay, anyways, enough of all that. I can make this file available to you guys if you're curious, if you want to experiment with it on your own. But I would much rather show you how to make it before we get into how it works. All right, so for your monthly income, using these working numbers, we got to figure out how much is what on each. Let me switch my screen here. I would estimate that my monthly income, based on all of my bills and not my bills, but like taxes and if your job pays you benefits or stuff like that, I probably am only keeping about 30 to 40%, or no, I'm losing about 30 to 40% of the money that I make to stuff like, benefits or taxes or whatever. So to get your monthly income, this is the next step that we're currently on. You're going to take your working salary number. It's the first step. You're going to multiply that salary number by, we're going to say 0.35, multiply by 0.35, and then divide that number by 12. And that will get you your monthly income. That's going to be a little bit more accurately to something called your net, because it's what the money that you're actually keeping in at the end of the month after the government decides that it wants a paycheck from your hard-earned work. You want to be accurate in your budgeting presentations, and you want to be consistent in your budgeting presentations, because otherwise you will end up going over and losing money. The goal is to keep as much money as possible while still having some fun with it, because we work very hard for the income that we get. You should be able to enjoy it. I will help you do that for sure. So can somebody give me a working salary for, give me their job and their working salary number so I can show you how this would calculate out? Any volunteers? I can pick somebody. Yeah, Sawyer. 81,000 yearly. What's your job? Okay, so we got a structural engineer making, good thing I'm not a spelling engineer. Structural engine, we'll call it engine. $81,000 yearly. So we're going to take that 81K and we're going to multiply that by 0.35. Oh, I forgot a step. Hold on. So 81K multiplied by 0.35. That's going to be the cut that we lose over the year based on taxes or per month. Okay, so 81K times 0.35. Let me pull up my calculator real quick. Okay, there we are. So 81000 times 0.35 equals 28K paid towards the government, to taxes, towards my retirement, towards my other services that are in Washington specifically. Okay, so we need to subtract this number from our yearly salary. So let me spell this out real quick. I'm sorry, I forgot this step when I broke it down. So you're paying about 28.350 a year on taxes, your retirement, your savings, stuff like that. Okay, so now we subtract that number from the original number. We get 81. I just want to show all my work here so that I can reference it later. We get 28, and you can do this with your numbers too. 28,350 equals, let me do that real quick. Just copy this. Control X, 81000 minus 28350. 28350. Okay, so you are taking home at the end of the year, subtracting all of your contributions, about $52,000. Now, this is the number that we divide by 12, because this is going to give us a far more accurate representation of how much money that we're going to make every month. Okay, divide that by 12. That is going to be your monthly income is about $4,387.50. So then we go 52,650 divided by 12 equals 4387.5. And then if this is a job that gets paid twice a week, or not twice a week, that'd be great. Twice a month, we're going to divide this number by 2 to get your checks that you will earn twice a month. So some jobs pay monthly, teaching pays monthly, anything that you do for the government is going to pay monthly. Most of the time you're going to get paid bi-monthly though, depending on your position. Okay, so all of this math has equated that Sawyer, you can anticipate to make, based on our working numbers, $4,387.50 every month. So now your guys' job is to calculate your monthly income. You got to multiply it by that 0.35, subtract that number, and then divide by 12 or 24 if you think your job pays twice a month, to get your monthly income, which we'll put into a spreadsheet here shortly. So I'm going to end the Zoom room again. Next, you guys have about 15-ish minutes, 20 minutes to calculate out your monthly income based on the numbers that you gathered, and then we'll build a spreadsheet out of it. Sound good? Any questions? Okay, go ahead and get started. Okay, so to actually build out your, I'm going to move these over so I have my my full screen available here. I personally find it easiest to use Google Sheets because it's a lot easier to use on my phone. 99% of the time I'm spending money, I have my phone in my pocket or I have my phone nearby. Very, very rarely do I update my budget spreadsheet when I am on my computer. That's only if I haven't updated it in a few days. I kind of fell out of habit. And I need to sit down and make sure that everything is all good here. We'll get into that later on. So, but what you guys want to do is go to Google Sheets. You can use Excel if you're more familiar with that, or you're more comfortable with that. Let me pull my sheets up real quick. I'm going to make a blank spreadsheet. There we go. And just so that we have, we're going to work with William's numbers here. Every month we are making about 4387.5. This is just for example's sake. You will put your monthly income in this spot. So this is all you need to do for the current part because I need to save my file here. You can call it the Canvas file name of PROJ 1.1 budgeting spreadsheet V1 if you want to save yourself the hassle of trying to find it later or trying to rename it later. Oh, I hit escape and immediately undid all of my work. PROJ 1.1 budgeting spreadsheets V1. And now I can start building out my my spreadsheet. Before I start doing functions and stuff, oh, we are live, by the way, I forgot. So you should have your phone away. Namita, please. Thank you. I like to break down my spreadsheet, and this is something that you can adjust depending on your guys' income and your guys' whether you're working with your working numbers based off your dream job or you're working with your current income. I like to break my spending down into 4 categories, and I recommend you copy mine because these are the things that I'm buying most frequently. That's going to be bills, fun, groceries, and savings. And I do actually want you to type them out on each of the numbers. I know some of you are logging in still, but this video is saved for later, so you can access it later if you need to. So the way that I like to break down, because I have a lot of bills currently, I have some credit card debt, I have some student loan debt that I'm paying off, I have a car payment, I got a lot of bills every month, okay? So I dedicate 60% of my income to my bills every month. You can change these numbers, but for the purposes of demonstration, I want you guys to use these while I show you how to do these things. So let me see what savings is at currently. I dedicate 15% of my income to fun and to groceries. I also have to pay for where I live. So if you still live with your parents, you can adjust some of these numbers, which I anticipate most of you do. Almost all of you probably. And then in the economy that we have to exist in as adults, it's pretty hard to save money given the rising cost of everything. So I try ideally to save about 10% of my income, but it doesn't always work out that way. And that's okay. That's how it goes sometimes. But these are the ratios that I'm working with. Maybe you've heard of the 50-30-10 rule. I think, wait, is that, no, 50-30-20. So 50% goes to needs, 30% goes to wants, 20% goes to savings. That didn't quite work for me. This makes a lot more sense to my brain. 50-30-20 can work for you, but in order to get a little more granular and to get a deeper understanding of where our money is actually moving, I find these numbers to work better. Again, you can adjust these. You can have more fun money. You can have less grocery money. So I don't imagine you guys are buying a lot of groceries. Your priorities right now are probably fun and savings. Or if you're a senior planning on graduating, savings definitely as you kind of move out for college, if that's your plan, living outside of your parents, if that's your plan, right? These numbers are subject to change. These are just Mr. Blakeney's numbers, working adult numbers, we'll call it that. Okay, so to calculate these numbers into separate categories to do the math for us automatically, you need a place to put your income and you need a place to put your expenses, okay? On my example, my income goes in this section right here, and it breaks it down in a visual sense. I'm a very visual person. So it breaks it down visually, and then these are all of my expenses. The vocab that I want you guys to keep in mind is that credit, for the purposes of budgeting, means money coming in. Debit, for the purposes of budgeting, means money going out. So when I say a line of credit, if you look on the rubric, line of credit is just where you show your income coming in, and line of debit is where your expenses show your money going out. However that money arrives, whether that's from your work or whether that's from maybe it was a birthday or a holiday, like wherever that money comes from, it needs to either be in a line of credit or a line of debit. And there needs to be a clear spot in your budgeting spreadsheet for these two separate things. And I have it right here visually so you can see what equals what. So now let's build that little section where you can put your income. I like to do it in a 2-column approach where I have a way to leave notes or a way to kind of organize my thoughts. So we're going to do that for example purposes here. We're going to say our work income goes in this cell right here. So I'm going to type out the word here. And then our extra income goes next to it in a separate section though, goes here. And then we have bills expenses. We have fun expenses. You don't need a note section. You can just have it in a column like this. You have groceries expenses. And you have savings, which is technically an expense, even though it's your own money, just in a different spot. Okay. So now we have destinations for where our money goes in and where our money goes out. You can see this on the Zoom room as well. We've not done any math or any functions yet. We're just kind of collecting all of our pieces of data in order to create a solid spreadsheet out of them. What I like to do is on the income sections, you can look up here on top of your Google Sheets, there's this little FX section with a big search bar. FX, like in math, stands for functions. We're going to write a function that is going to allow our spreadsheet to start doing our math here. And the function is super simple, equals 0. And then you hit enter. That's going to turn it into a 0 that is ready to be interpreted by Excel or by Google Sheets to against some ratios, which we're going to set here in just a second. So I'm going to set both of my my work income and my extra income to be equal 0. And then we'll do the ratios for each bill right here. Okay. So to start doing the functions, I'm working with these percentages. The same way that you calculated the 35% reduction in whatever money you got from your job, we're going to do a similar thing to count against this total right here. Actually, that's a good spot. So I want to, before we do that, I want to add a total section. And instead of typing equals 0 next to this one, we are going to type the names of the cells that cover both of our lines of credit, both our work income, both our extra income. That's going to be A11 and A12. So to add these two together, we're going to use a sum function by typing equals in the cell. You can either type it in the cell that we're trying to make math happen in, or you can type it in the function bar. Then you're going to do parentheses, or sorry, write the word sum in all caps, and then parentheses. Inside of the parentheses, you put the name of the cell that you want to add first, because sum is just adding together. So we're going to do actually not A11, it's B11 and B12. So we're going to go B11. You can see that it highlights it in Google Sheets like that. A comma, B12. This sum function is going to take the data that is in B11 and B12 and add it together to get our total amount of money that we made during the month. So then you just hit enter, it's going to be 0 because there's no data in there yet. Now we need to set up our ratios for dividing how our income gets divided up. Since we don't want to try to make ratios happen between two separate numbers here, we don't want to overcomplicate this. We have this total section right here that we're going to use for each of these pieces right here. So to do your bills expenses, all of these expenses are going to relate to this total cell right here, which is D11. So on bills expenses, you type equals sum. This isn't even the best way to do this, but this is the way that like I do it and the way that makes sense to me. So you do D11 is the total income cell, shift 8 to get an asterisk, and you go 0.6 or however big percentage you want to set your ratio to for bills. You hit enter. It's all going to be zeros because it's not, we don't have any data yet. But then in fun expenses, same thing. You go equals sum, parentheses, D12, shift 8 times 0. Whatever percentage you set your fun money to. Mine's 15, so 0.15, enter. Same thing for groceries, equals sum, parentheses, D12, or D11, excuse me. D11 times 0.15. And then finally, in savings, equals sum D12, or D11, sorry, I'm thinking D&D terms. D11 times 0.1 for 10%. Now we have established our lines of credit and our lines of debit. Even though there's no actual transactions, there's no money being spent yet in each of these specific categories. What you can do now is go into the work income section, double click on that, and put in your, replace the 0 in the equals 0 with the money that you made. Now, here's something that changed my budgeting for the better. All money that you spend rounds up to the next dollar. All money that you make rounds down to the next dollar. A lot of budgeting is tricking your brain into hiding money from itself so that you slowly build up a stockpile of things that won't make you go broke. I'm not trying to make anybody into billionaires, but I am trying to help you hold on to that extra $50, $60, $70 at the end of the month because it does add up and it adds up really fast. So let's say I'm making $43.87.5 this month. I'm going to put in to my equals sign here, $43.87. I'm just going to leave that $50 in the ether. And you can see automatically it's going to do some calculations here. This month, if you did it right, I can spend $2,632.22 on bills, no money on fun, which means I did something wrong, $658 on groceries, and $438 I should try to save. This will be for your working numbers or for your actual numbers. It's because I did D12 times 0.15. That would do it. So these numbers, since they are the same, should equal up to, the same number. If you notice on the rubric for the budget spreadsheet, there's something called a parity section. That's another math term that determines something whether it is positive or negative. It's also a computer science term. That means the data is backed up in a reliable way. I don't trust my own math. So I've built into my spreadsheets, and I want you guys just to have the extra information. We're going to build what's called a parity section. What a parity section does is it's now going to create a sum of this row 15 right here to make sure that the money that is budgeted matches the money that is coming in. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to F14, and I'm going to write the word parity, or you can write the word backup, or you can write the word check, or you can write the word equal. You can write whatever term makes sense to you that checks your math. I'm going to actually do math check for demonstration purposes, so that you know that the money you budget and the money you make is the same number, and you're not going over or you're not way under budget, which is better than going over budget, but you want to use your money as effectively and efficiently as possible. So what we do to add up a range of cells, we're going to do another equals sum function. I'm actually going to do it next to it to stick with the theme. Equals sum, but instead of just adding two cells together, we're going to add a range of cells together. To add a range of cells, you start with the first one. In our case, it's A15. And you can see how these ratios and percentages start to interact with one another. Okay. To add up a range, you do the first cell where it starts, a colon, the two dots, and then the cell where you want it to end. In this case, it's D15. That is going to give me the sum of the range of every piece of data inside of the cells that are on row 15. So when I hit enter, it'll add up to be the same amount as my total income. Does this all make sense? Is anybody having trouble getting the math to do it right? Or is anybody having trouble getting the spreadsheet to behave like mine is on the example? Okay. So we've established our budget. This month, I can spend this much on these different things. I like to color code mine, you don't have to. So I'm going to add a little border around the outside like this. And then I like doing varying shades of green for money. You do not have to do this at all, but it will make it easier to see on the projector. And as you get the darker greens, it's kind of hard to read. So I like to change the font color to be white so that you can clearly see at a glance how each of the things break down. Okay, so now we have this information kind of sectioned off on our spreadsheet. I'm going to do another little border here and a little border here. So I like building boxes. And then finally another little border here. You can pick whatever colors you want, but I like to do boxes around the outside so I can see what my brain kind of helps truncate all the pieces. Okay, so let's make the lines of credit now, where you guys actually put your expenses and how they check against the numbers that you have budgeted. Okay, so what we need to do now is write a transactions tab underneath each of these expenses. So just write the word transactions 4 times to create that clear visual separation between the different pieces of information that we're working with here. And then I'm going to also, this is important that you do add, you can hold shift and click on a range to select multiple cells. So I'm going to click on A17 here, column A, row 17. I'm going to hold shift and then click on D17, and it's going to auto select that whole row. I'm going to go up here next to my paint bucket, and I'm going to set a border around these cells so that I know that these are where the sums of all of my transactions are going to go. But we don't have any transactions to work with yet. So I want you guys to put in some fake transactions. They don't have to be your actual transactions, but I'm going to say $10, $20, $30. We'll count up to 100. $40, $50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to alternate between singles and doubles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Groceries, I'm going to do the same. 10, 20. If you want to just copy me, that's fine too. 60, 70, 80, 90, and then 100. And then the same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so now we have some data all contained in the columns that they relate to. Spent this much on, or these were 10 different bill transactions. These were 10 different fund transactions, 10 different grocery store trips, and 10 opportunities I had to save some money. What we're going to do now is add up the entirety of this column so that we don't have to try and guess, right? See how far this spreadsheet goes down. It goes down to line 1,000 or row 1,000. We're not going to need that much. What we do here is go into A17, if you followed along with me, but it's that transactions box that we created. And we're going to do another sum of a range the same way that we created the math check. So we're going to go equals sum, parentheses. And we're going to start with A18 and go to A27. So A18, parentheses, and then go to A27. Oh, hold on. There we go. So that's going to, you can't really see because it's got this thing right here. That's going to create a sum of all of my bill expenses. I'm going to hit enter. Spent 550 out of my budgeted 2,632. The cool part is we've already written this function. A lot of this data is in the same set of parameters. You can just highlight this, Control C, and then Control V, oh, hold on. Hold on, it's being weird. Wait, it didn't do what I needed it to do. Okay, Control V, Control V. Took away my formatting though, which is frustrating. Okay, but these are all still saying 550 because they're all still adding up column A. You need to go into the function. You can either double click on the number and change this letter to be B, arrow key over to B, enter. This is, we don't want it to add up column A even though they're the same numbers. So C18 to C27, and then the same thing on here, change the A to D, D. There we go. So now we have spots where we can put, if you want extra range, you don't have to go to 27. You can go to A1000, just as long as it's, it does not interfere with the above math. You're totally fine. So I'm actually going to do that for each of mine here. The 27 was just an example. You can use my working numbers, or you can use your actual working numbers that you came up with. And this is assuming that I get paid once a month. We would just do this same process every time that money came in, if we needed to otherwise. Okay. I'm actually going to move math check by going Control X and then Control V. Just move it over there. So it's kind of all in the same within my, my income and my expenses section. It's all about that clear visual separation. It's all about laying out your expenses in a way that you can see and interpret at a glance, so you can start to notice the patterns and the trends of where your money goes and how it comes in. We're going to leave it here for today because this was a lot of really boring bookkeeping. I think it's fascinating personally. I love spreadsheets. But that's something that you guys, you know, it's a taste you acquire as you age. Does anybody have any questions on this process that I've outlined? Because this is some pretty advanced Excelling already. Are we good? Okay. So I will make this Excel spreadsheet as an example available. I'll download it as an Excel sheet so you can look at it through the thread. These videos will be up to walk you through in case you ever are curious how I did something. Oh, actually, real quick, let me add some extra income. Let's say grandma gave me $50. So I'm going to change the 0 on B12 to totally shift gears, change it to 50. And let's say I found $20 on the street. Because this is an equals function, I can just do a plus sign and add the 20 I found on the street, it's going to equal 70. And it's going to update my, not only my total, but my math check and all of my expense budgets. I have designed it this way. I mean, I haven't designed it this way, but this is the way that I've found that best works because it takes the least effort. The hardest part of doing a spreadsheet like this is getting into the habit of using and confronting your transactions. So again, to kind of retool, I'll make this sheet available. You'll have the Zoom rooms. You want to put in your working numbers. You can adjust the percentages on row 15 to not be 60, 15, 15, 10. You can be whatever you want them to be. But this is what's due with at least the rest of the week in either simulated or real transactions with your real income or your working income. It's due by Friday at midnight. You need to have your version spelled out, and I can help you check it later this week. But that's your guys' responsibility for the remainder of this week. Does that make sense? Nobody has any questions? We're good? Okay, thank you for listening. I know that's not the most interesting thing, but this, guys, I'm not kidding. This has saved me almost $4,000 in about 3 months. Is doing it like this. It's crazy. It's crazy. I can't endorse doing it like this enough. Okay, I'll process this Zoom room. I'll make this Excel sheet available. You have until Friday to fill in some transactions. We're going to keep talking about finances. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great rest of your day. Good luck. Don't forget to sign out. Exit from the back, please.